Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Farmer's Tropic Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, April 22nd. A lot to review in today's video, so I'll try to go quickly. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purpose only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So let's rewind to yesterday. Price action down, heavy across the board. Uh, they were looking for reasons for that. They said, the main story that I heard all over the place was Trump trying to take out Powell from the Fed. Like, okay, if you really believe that, that you need these narratives to explain the price action, but what I try to do every day for you is to basically say, obviously we've got reasons for things happening, but I think it really helps to look at the price action, understand where there's technical resistance, technical support, and where price can kind of move to, whether you have a signal to trade, whether you don't. Also looking at things like market breadth, giving you a sense of yesterday, breadth was horrible. Today, it was strong. So what does all this mean, in terms of, the price action that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis? And does it make sense to make a lot of predictions with this market? I'm going to say, I'm going to answer the latter first, and I'm going to say no. There's so many people that are trying to predict, and it reminds me, there's a lot of different memes that come to mind, but like I said, I've got a lot of things to go through in this video, so I'll kind of keep it short. But, if you're trying to analyze 15 different factors to tell you whether or not you've got a bullish signal or bearish signal, or, looking at the, because I see so many people trying to do that, right? And then trying to be, snarky about the whole thing too. First of all, you don't have time for all of that. And trying to think of different things that you want the market to be, or trying to extract some longer term signal from this, I think is very difficult. At the end of the day, like we've talked about this before, long term, this will probably be a good buying opportunity, if you've got a long enough time horizon. And that's what it always equates to when you've got market dips. But if you're trading more in the near term, and you're trading like, this week, and or for this month, trying to have a positive month for this month, or even for next month, anything could happen. And I think right now the easiest thing to try to understand, by the way, Tesla not doing much for earnings. We'll see what Elon has to say, but this stock gets so much attention. I feel like it sucks the air out of the room, and the stock is barely moving. But maybe they'll say something. I think the main question will be whether Elon says something about what his timeline is for leaving Doge. If he mentions that, stock probably pops on that. But yesterday's price action, straight down. Today's price action, pretty much up for the majority of the day, and we kind of are back to where we closed on Friday. Does that give you any major signal? No. But can you make money on both of those days? Sure. You could have made money yesterday playing to the downside, because up until the end of the day, we trended to the downside. Today, we mostly trended to the upside, and very similar. Like I think, again, I'm going a little bit from recollection, but we started down yesterday when the market opened and it kept going. Today, we started up and the market kept going. Why not just keep it simple and forget all of this fortune cookie, trying to tell what the fortune is going to be for this market? Because, I could come up with a bullish thing or bearish thing, depending on what you want to sell. And I think that there's really good salespeople out there who are trying to tell you that stuff. There's so many misconceptions or things that got really noisy. And I'm guilty of that too. For example, I talked time and time again about how April is one of the strongest seasonal months of the year. Well, if you followed that solely and didn't pay attention to the price action, month to date, the S&P is down almost 6%. Qs are down 5%. So it's, in my opinion, it's okay to look at some of these factors that may increase the probability of success. But, there's so many of these things, right, that you could say, and again, the best salesman will pick out the ones that work. I heard for months, oh, well, the dollar going down should be great for stocks. That was wrong too, right? How many times? Well, as long as the dollar, I've never seen an environment where the dollar goes down and the stocks don't go up. Completely wrong. So I think that folks are really trying to pay attention as well to, what comes out of these possible trade deals. And I am not an expert on tariffs, but I do know like what this market is telling me. And it's a day trader's paradise right now. So I would stick to that. I think so many people are trying to figure out what the day-to-day move is going to be. If you could kind of come in every day and be objective and say, I'm going to play either direction, or understand that, as I've talked about in yesterday's video, that, first of all, one day is not a trend, either yesterday, today, whatever. But this market has been exhibiting more bear market characteristics. Again, you could argue whether it's a bear market, bull market. That's for you to decide, or somebody else, someone else to tell you to sell you that line about whether it's a bull market or bear market. But I know that this market has been exhibiting more bear market characteristics because we've seen a lot of good-looking setups fail. We've seen a lot of breakouts fail, right? And those to me are characteristics of a bear market. Now, look at what we did today in the price action. Does today's price action convince you that the market volatility is over with, right? That we're now going up, and now we're going back to a bull market? I would say heck no. But I think it gave you some things to do on the trading side today. And notice where we stopped for the day. We stopped right at the 5-period moving average, right? I use the 5-period moving average basically to tell me if we're short-term trending up or down. Like for this, we were trending down. Here, we kind of got back above for a couple days, the 5-period moving average, and now we've kind of slipped back below. Also, what I've been posting a lot, because I really think that this is a great roadmap for price action. But look at where SPY got to today. So it really depended, like if knowing where your resistance was, 529.30, something that we went over all day in the trading room today, depending on if you wanted to be greedy and try to push here. But we stopped right here. And it's not to say that tomorrow we can't get into the value area for the week and that would generate a new signal. But today, the trend was up. And, just today, the 1-day trend was up and we ran right into resistance. And that's it. That's the best, I could tell you for the overall market. And I could tell you what the plan will be tomorrow. If we hold inside, if we break into the value area for the week, 529.30, I will probably be looking to play the bullish 80% roll all the way up to 543.25. So again, it's a little bit of like if then type moves right now. Another thing too is if we get rejected and we start moving below these moving averages, then I would say it could be a short setup for tomorrow. I would also add in breadth has been a pretty good signal. For example, the breadth was horrible yesterday. Today, the breadth was better. Did we get a full-on signal of like, a major like up, like a follow day, follow through day, or downside capitulation yesterday or today? Nope. All right, so today finished at plus 89% up volume for New York Stock Exchange. So that's close. 90% is generally, there's a rule for this. You could look up Lowry's rule of up volume versus down volume. You could Google that or AI that, whatever whatever you like. But there is, if it's over 90%, it means something from a technical standpoint. Just as a down volume day of over 90% equals something. Qs, I'm going to keep going here. The Qs jumped into the value area, but kind of got a little bit of a rejection there, but it's sitting right there. So it's a little bit of a decision time. I can't really tell you because we're not close enough for this to say bullish 80% rule triggered, but it very well could be. And again, we erased the whole move from yesterday. So I'm watching this, call it 448 spot 5 level. That's what I would be watching for tomorrow because that may generate the bullish 80% rule. If not, it may go the other way. But I would also say, I use breadth to help. If we've got very strong breadth, then I'm probably going to play things to the long side. If we're moving up and the breadth is really weak, then I may not do much, right? I may just continue to kind of manage a couple of the new positions that I did put on today. Let me go through let me talk about those. And, I think we talked a little bit about this. I'm going to use Bitcoin futures because it's a little bit cleaner of a chart here, but let's talk about Bitcoin, right? I had mentioned I felt suspect based on the Bitcoin move yesterday, because a lot of these moves have been failing. But I saw the strength, and I saw that we got over yesterday's highs in Bitcoin, so I put on the trade. I put on the trade pre-market, and this works really well today, up 4.6% for the day. And hey, this is a nice technical setup. So even though I don't like a lot of the things in this market, I don't like that the one day it looks like the sky's falling, the next day everything looks great, that it's not consistent. There's no follow through in this market. I'm still going to play like a signal when I see one. So I think Bitcoin very interesting. I'm looking for a move basically up 5.5% to this VPOC. Again, I traded IBIT, just a little bit easier than trading futures. And same thing, I'm looking for a move up about 5%. That would be my target for a short-term trade. 54.85 is the level that I'm paying attention to. And as long as price is above 50 in this ETF. Now, let's go through a couple other names. I just want to show you this on the 1-hour chart too. But I noticed that someone asked me earlier, they're like, hey, you were really looking at MSTR as well. The reason why I chose IBIT is because pre-market, this was getting above, like if you look right around like 8 o'clock in the morning, this got above the previous day's highs. MSTR did not. So I was only going to trade one or the other. I decided to, here was MSTR at 8 o'clock, right? It was kind of sitting here consolidating. So here's where this finished. Still a heck of a nice day, regardless if you trade either one of these. It made up for this. But look at where we are here in MSTR, right? This is another issue too. Overhead supply. You're going to have to deal with some of this. And that's what happened with MSTR today. That second VPOC up here. Remember, every time price approaches one of these, they become a battle between new buyers and existing sellers. And we know that high volume, what these lines represent, where we haven't revisited, is generally a place where sellers could possibly tip the scale, and kind of did that here on the second VPOC. It still remained like a battle between new buyers and sellers. Nobody's really won out. I think if we move below 341 tomorrow, you get the answer that sellers have overwhelmed the new buyers. If we can get above 348 tomorrow, the buyers are in control, right? And then you could look for the next move up, which is 359. See how we're kind of coming through a decision? If this happens, then this, or if this happens, then that. Now you still have to adjust, but that's the signal, right? Because signals can change and signals can reverse, especially in the market that we're in right now. But that this at least gives me the game plan of how I want to tackle this, right? And again, if you read like the Darvis book, it's very, very similar concept. We're just making it smarter than the Darvis approach, because we're using statistics, right? We're using volume at price, and we're using statistics around that information. All right, so that's MSTR. Hood. All right, I decided to trade Hood today. This is what Hood looks like on the daily chart. Again, I've kind of go back and forth with this name. It's got a lot of work to do, but there is a bullish 80% rule on the daily and on the 1 hour, but it's not really giving me that much like love and feeling in this trade. If it breaks back below 41.50, I'll be out of this trade. But for now, I got bullish 80% rule on the 1 hour chart, daily value, this value area which is the value area for the week, and the value area for the month. So I'm looking for a move basically up to 45. I think that's good risk to reward, because I got involved in this name right around in here. That's a good risk to reward trade, because I can only, provided there's no gap down, which there's no there's definitely no guarantee of that, but as long as it stays above this 41.50, or even if it breaks below, that's not that bad, considering I'm looking for a bigger move to the upside. All right, that's Robinhood. Let's get to a couple other themes for the day. As I mentioned, there's a lot of interesting things that happened today. Big move in Netflix. Netflix was so subdued yesterday, took out, couldn't get through this VPOC yesterday. Again, the sellers kind of won out yesterday. Today, the buyers took charge. Now, look at where this stock is. And I think this is going to be, my opinion, a very interesting chart to watch going forward. Why do I say that? Why is this going to be very could give some clues about the overall market? Because Netflix is still considered a growth stock. There's not a lot of growth stocks that are breaking out, right? Especially your larger cap names, right? And it is more of this is now technically a communications name because that's how they've decided to group this stock into. It's referring to the S&P, and this is in the XLC ETF. But regardless, it's to me, it's still a growth stock. And notice how it kind of touched the previous highs and didn't want to get through it. So it doesn't like, I think, first of all, you need a little bit of patience. Just because something touches that for the first time doesn't get through it. It certainly has a buy signal going on here. It's above the value area for the month. It's above all the moving averages. But I think it will be really interesting for the overall market if this stock can continue to new highs. Fundamentally, I think the earnings were great. It's not extended, it's just here's the 50-day moving average. So I think if this stock can break out to new highs, that's telling me something for the overall market, that maybe the overall market is starting to heal a little bit. If it can't and it collapses and goes back into the range, hey, then like the groundhog saw its shadow, or and we've got two more months of a bear market, or so. I'm being funny. I'm making this up, these analogies as I go along, but I think that tells you something. If a company that had really good strong earnings, and also is not affected by trade tariffs for what they say, then this is going to be, then there shouldn't be a reason that this stock can't break out, other than we're just in a really nasty market right now. So I think this is a good name to keep an eye on. I think this is a good name to keep an eye on too, because it's kind of a similar type name. It's strong and it hasn't reported earnings yet, but I think Spotify is a name to definitely keep an eye on, and maybe it won't move until earnings, which is going to be what, next week? Yeah, next week for Spotify, but maybe it runs into the earnings report. All right, a couple other things too. Now, I've heard a bunch of different things going into earnings season. One of which I heard is earnings reports, they're not going to matter because we've got a macro tape, and everybody's going to do bad, right? Because there's so much uncertainty. Well, I wouldn't look at it that way. I understand that's a cause, but I think being objective, you're going to find market leaders. Let me give you an example. Right. Today, I heard something that I've never heard before. And again, it's just because of the environment that we're in too. But 3M comes out today and they use a completely different term. And I thought that this was very interesting how they phrased this. They used a phrase called tariff sensitivity, right? And they actually were able to quantify what the impact would be for them, a pretty big industrial type company. And they said they're 20 cents to 40 cents, right? So how did they come up with that? I don't know, because I'm not inside the company, but say that's pretty good, right? Because I'll tell you, there's been time and time again where good, smart companies, good leadership will manage to skirt around issues or problems. Now, this is a particularly big issue with possible trade tariffs, possible trade wars, but there's been companies have all different types of issues that they've got to get through, right? So I think that if there's some companies that, especially something like a 3M, who's exposed, if they're able to navigate around such a situation, that tells me that you've got pretty strong company leadership there. And again, that happens time and time again, just with other issues that some, corporate management, CEOs can get through and be creative and do things and become market leader. So I got long 3M today in my longer term trade, my trend account. Also, just because of something like that, where they say something different, the technicals still have to agree with what I'm doing. And you've got this nice little check back, right, to the top of the value area, which again, major support, right? You're also above the 200-day moving average. So you're not extended here either, right? So this, again, am I looking for this trade to be wonderful tomorrow? No, but I think that this is a good entry place. And again, where do I know where the trade goes wrong? If it breaks back below the 200-day moving average, if you want to just keep it simple and use that, or if it breaks back into the value area for the year, right? So I think like this is a nice trade idea. Again, I don't know if it's going to work because I don't have a crystal ball, but I've got a signal and I've got a little bit of a market dip. Remember, this thing was holding up really well until we got to until we got to all the way to the end of March. So again, I like this here. It still is going to have to get through some resistance and fight through overhead supply and all of that, but I think very good. I also liked what GE had to say today too, right? This is now GE Aerospace, but look at this is also just above the value area for the year. And also same thing above the 200-day moving average. So this is to me, instead of like playing, you know, guessing games about what's going to happen with, you know, or who's going to say what on an earnings call. Why not take the information and use it? So many people think that they miss something, right? That they have to try to guess on earnings and get it right and be positioned in it. If things, I mean, both of these names are not extended whatsoever. They're just barely above the 200-day moving average. You didn't miss anything. And let me break it to you. Most of these companies that are going to report earnings too in the next couple of weeks, you're not going to miss anything either. Do you think that you missed anything in Netflix either if you didn't pre-position into Netflix for earnings? No. You know, because it made the move today, right? And so you could have caught it today, and or you know, it's not, if this stock is really going to move and be strong, then the move is probably just starting. So you got to get these, there's so many of these misconceptions. Like I started off this video with how the misconception about, oh, the weaker dollar is supposed to be great for stocks. Completely wrong. Right? There's so many misconceptions out there. Remember, just because somebody says something and they say it confidently, right? It gives traders, it gives retail traders, younger traders, the idea that they have a crystal ball, right? But you don't, right? So have a plan and understand that, you know, take away, because I think if there's so many people right now that are politically motivated on both sides. If you could be objective and just listen to what some of these companies have to say about how they're navigating this situation, right? Once this situation kind of gets away, eventually it will, and things will be a little bit less headline driven. You want to come away with a really strong watch list. And again, you don't have to be taking positions here and there. You go back to what we said in the beginning of this video, right? That this is a day trader's market right now. It's not anything else. I'm sorry, right? So I think that's very interesting. One other name, I'm going to end on one other trade idea for you. This is a chart that I sent out this weekend in ARGT. This is the Argentina ETF that's kind of hanging around here. Last couple of times it's got to this like $86 to $88 range. It's had difficulty with that, but it's kind of hanging in here, right? And this is I think Melly is the top weight in this. GGAL is the second weight in this. I went long this name today because I want some international exposure. And why not go into one of the strongest, you know, countries out there right now in terms of the price action? Please don't send me things about the company's, you know, debt to equity ratio or the, you know, the countries, you know, and so on. I'm talking about price action, right? So GGAL saw, I think it was like 2,000 calls that went up, going just not going out too far. These were the May 70 calls, which is right around where this VPOC is. So that's what I'm targeting. Where do I know the trade's not going to work? If it breaks back below and goes into the value area for the month. But I think it's, you know, another, and just like I talked about with, I think with Robinhood, you know, I'm only going to hopefully lose a little bit here down to like 58, right? But I'm looking for a move all the way up to 69 bucks. And someone else apparently thinks that too with, excuse me, it was 3,000 of the May 70 calls that went up on the tape. So I'll leave it there. Again, try not to get to convince yourself every day. And I know it's tough too, because I fall into this trap that don't get too positive, don't get too negative. You know, don't get too negative about yesterday, and realize again that the way that this market is moving on a day-to-day basis, you're getting trade opportunities. They may be day trades, but you're still getting trade opportunities on both sides of the market. Guys, have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.